Yeah.
I have a couple of questions to ask you about Engineer Shulende. So during this interview, I'm going to refer to you as the commissioner.
Okay.
That's the office that you occupy last when you went to chief. All right. So to start, sir, I'm going to mention some projects that you worked on together from my research with Engineer Famalaye. When Engineer Shulende took over as the director or the coordinator of the Lagos State Water Management Office, Wastewater Management Office. 4 wastewater treatment plants: Ikonri, Abeson, Alaosa, and Okafa.
Rehabilitated.
Were memorable, and he worked on them. Yeah, and then so can you walk us through how his leadership turned, under your distinguished self, was able to help you, meet Lagos State environmental sustainability, in terms of that project?
Thank you very much. If I were to speak on Engineer Lekon Shulende,
Yes, sir.
I will regard him as one of the best engineers we had in the Office of Drainage Services when I was there. Starting from legendary Late Olubunmi Santos, who I used to call an encyclopedia of drainage services in Lagos. May his soul rest in perfect peace. Then to Engineer Kisoya, succeeded. Then the next person I will call is Engineer Lekon Shulende. And he's very brilliant, and he's a tax master. Most people do not, when you see him, most people tend to be put off by his brash approach and so on. So initially too, when I became commissioner and so on, I was also put off by his brash approach. And really, he wasn't brash. He's a tax master. He's somebody who wants to get things done. So as I got to know him better, I discovered that this is a talent, and it's somebody to be cherished, and somebody you can work with, and so on. And I was never disappointed. Any assignment he was given, it performed excellently well, and so on. Till he became the, as you said, he was once director, and then later he was the coordinator of Lagos State Waste Management Office. At that time, most of the wastewater plants that we had in Lagos, in Ikonri, in Abeson, and several other places, and so on, were moribund. So it was now the task of the coordinator, who happens to be Lekon Shulende, to revive all those wastewater plants and so on. And he did well. He rehabilitated many of them, and was so impressed. Everybody was impressed by him. And so on. And let me tell you another story. And I remember when I was secretary to the state government under Governor Akinwumi Ambode, he was invited one day, and the governor immediately entered Governor Akinwumi Ambode's office. The governor said, I don't like you, but I've asked people about what I want to do, and they say you are the best person to do it. So because of that, that's why I'm putting you there. I don't like you, but I'm going to put you there. If you fail, you are out. And Governor Ambode was never disappointed. And when he performed extremely well, he performed his task, and he did very well. So I wasn't surprised when Governor Sanwo-Olu came in 2019, and then he was now appointed as the permanent secretary, Office of Drainage Services. In fact, when I was asked to go back by our leader, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to go back to the Ministry of Environment to help revive the Office of Drainage Services and so on. Immediately I heard that Engineer Lekon Shulende was posted. I was comfortable. I was relaxed. I knew the task was going to be easier for us to do.
I mean, you just entered into some of the line of questions I wanted to go. I was going to say that about he had a second spell with you as the permanent secretary when you returned as the commissioner for environment.
Environment.
Yeah. So during that time, he worked under you, and then one of the things that you did, one of the projects that you were able to deliver then was the Akinola Aboru River concrete lining. So what was it like collaborating on such a project with Engineer Shodende?
First of all, it was a big project, Aboru Canal and so on. Akinola Aboru River, which we did. It crossed across about 7 local governments. It was a big project. And I think it took almost about 3 years to even complete it. I remember the day we were launching it and so on. It was everybody in that community came over. Almost about 7 local government chairmen even came in and so on. So, and the people who are given the projects, you can trust Engineer Shodende. He really taxed them. He kept asking questions. He kept monitoring. And so I remember the day we were launching, he gave a promise. He said, I want to assure you that this project will never relax. We will never relax on this project. And we will make sure that the project was done. And actually, the people of the community, when they came about twice, when the contractors, when they were still waiting for payments, for the second or third payment and so on, and they were okay, they've stopped. We said, don't worry, they've been asked to, they will go back and so on. And it was interesting that the people actually performed and they did well. And we must give it to Engineer Shodende. He never gave up on them. He kept tasking them, he kept monitoring them until they were able to finish the job.
Thank you, sir. Another thing that I'd like you to reflect on is Lagos Island is plagued with flooding, and we know rightly so.
Lagos Island is below the sea level, yeah.
Below the sea level, and then one of many solutions to solve the flooding issue in Adeniji and Lagos Island and environment, one of them was to build a
pumping station, and it has to do when we are growing up. When we were growing up in our primary school days and so on, we used to do Magbo, Adeniji Adele area, Ekwetedo area. We used to run around and it was, the lagoon was very close to Adeniji Adele before Inland Bridge was built. It was, the whole place was lagoon. Lagoon was just by the roadside, by the Adeniji Adele road. We used to come. In fact, we used to play. We used to construct a boat with paper boats, and then we run from Tokumbo, Oshodi Street, and run up to the lagoon, and then we go back. And when we were very, very small and so, that used to be a very nice environment because there's a sort of congestion and sort of building new houses and so on. So the place has been compressed, and also due to climate change and a lot of water movement and so on. You find that the Dumagbo area and the reclamation and several Savage and several other areas, they have depressed. They have gone below the sea level, further below the sea level, because Lagos Island originally was below the sea level. The load of Lagos Island, from Obalinde to Isaleko, from Isaleko to Sangros to other areas, even up to Dolphin and several other places, we are below the sea level. Now, for over the years, they've gone further down. So it now became difficult for the water now to flow directly back to the lagoon and so on. That's why you have that ponding around Idumagbo area, Jankara side. And that ponding and so on and so, we just discovered that water could no longer flow into the canal. The canals were designed long ago, and the canals are still there, functioning. But the water from that depressed area around Idumagbo and several other areas, the water could no longer flow into the canal anymore because of the pressure. So when the people became a problem, so we now said, okay, what could we do and so on. And our engineers, led by Shodende, they came up with the solution that, okay, we needed a pumping station to be able to, a pumping station that will activate itself. When the water rises, it will activate itself and then start pumping water into the land. That was how we came about with that idea. And they did the design and everything and so on. And thank God Governor Sowolu also supported and several other things and so on. And we went to purchase the pumping machine and so on and so on. I'm sure it's almost finally installed now because it's still under. I don't think they fully installed it, but I think the process was on before I left.
So under
or it started under me until the process was on, and I don't think they've completed it because there are still some people doing the housing development around the area. They delayed them. There was a delay from their side because of the construction they are doing, so they had to delay and so on. I don't know the situation now. Maybe they will have completed it now and so on. So, but I guess, yeah. But I should be in a few months. It should be activated. Yeah.
Okay, so the next one I'm going to ask is, say, I know you worked with him closely, and then across two pivotal roles as the coordinator of LASWAMO and as the permanent sec.
Yeah.
So, what qualities consistently does he bring to the table that made him such an asset to the administration and to Lagos State?
I think one thing you must give to Registration is the skill he has and the competence that he has. He's highly knowledgeable about engineering. When it comes to engineering, he's very confident, self-confident. Because he's self-confident, people tend to think that he's arrogant and brash. But he's a very good leader. He's somebody who cares about his staff. He cares about welfare and so on. I remember when I was commissioner, he would come to me and say, we have not paid the people doing the people who call FAD, those who open manholes on the main roads and so on. We need to go and meet the governor. They have to be paid. I mean, those people must not, because even the work they are doing and so on. He was so concerned about staff, even every staff, and he took care of almost everybody about their welfare and so on. But when you are approaching him, you tend to be put off. But he's not. He's somebody who cares about people. But if you take time to listen to him and interact with him, you realize he's a very nice and easygoing person. But because of his disposition, people tend to think, oh, he's too brash and so on. And and I've enjoyed working with him. It's one of, if I were to pick somebody to work with again, I would always pick engineer Shudende. And I think the sky is his limit. Even just I know that he's retiring, but I know he's not tired. He's not tired. I know he still has a lot of tasks to do, not only in Lagos State but also at the federal level. By God's grace.
By God's grace. Amen. 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 I say amen to that. Okay. I mean, I'm glad the way you are answering is like you are just going ahead of me. You're answering a lot of questions I'm supposed to ask you. But the one I would like to ask now is maybe I will just take two together because I know you usually cover so many ground. If you could point to one moment, maybe a challenge overcome or maybe you call it a triumph that defined him, under you. One thing, maybe what would it be?
I'll say it's very principled, and I like people who are very principled, who knows their onions. It's somebody who will stand his ground any day. I remember when he took over as the PS of the Office of Drainage Services, there are some people who claim to have done some drainage works around the whole of Lagos and so on. I mean, somebody came and claimed to have been given a contract to do the drainages in almost all the local governments in Lagos State. He said he was awarded the contract to do all the drainage. I said that is impossible. It's an impossibility. Even one person cannot even finish one or two local governments alone. And I keep saying that even a system. Let me give you a system of drainage in Lagos. The longest one is System 5, which begins from Jibu, passing through Ojuelegba, through Akerele, through Babsalima Shaun, then going through Aguda, Orile, and then ending up in Kirikiri, because it discharges at Tinkan Island, and so on. For a person to be given that kind of drainage to do, it will take you a minimum of 8 months, 6 to 8 months to finish. So how can you now be given the drainages in Lagos? You have a 6 system in the mainland alone. Now we talk about Agege is not involved. Agege is not included. Lagos Island, Lekki, they are not included. So to be given one of these systems alone to cover which passes through about almost 5 local governments again, through Lere and other areas, to finish that drainage alone, no matter how well equipped or how well equipped you are, I don't think you can finish it in 6 months. So how can you now claim to do the whole of drainage, to be awarded the whole of drainage in Lagos. And I thought that was an important. So when the president now presented that he has done this, I think it came from the previous work and previous government and so on. So when the president now came and said, I think Governor Sanwo-Olu asked the, before I resume as commissioner, before I resume back as commissioner, he was asked to assess what the person did and so on. So all the engineers went round and so on, and they went to assess and so on, and they came back with the report that nothing was done in most of the places that they visited and so on. And they, based on the assessment that they did, no work, much of the work was not done, maybe less than 15%. And given the money the person collected, the person should have even refunded the government on that. So when I resumed as commissioner, so I made a report on ground. So, and I started asking questions from me, and he briefed me very well and so on. And they stood their ground that, look, not much work was done, given the amount of money they were paid, and so on. Even the contractor came to send people to me, they came to meet me and so on. And I had to tell them, I said, based on what our engineers assessed, I don't think you did much of the work. They said you only did less than 20%, which is around 14 to 15% that you did, and so on. I don't think you can be paid any money. And we sent our report to Governor Sanwo-Olu, and Governor Sanwo-Olu agreed with us, and so on. And I think credit must be given to Lekon for that, because he mobilized his staff and so on, and they went around and they did a thorough job in doing the assessment and so on. And I supported them. And Governor Sanwo-Olu too supported us based on our report. So,
thank you very much.
yes.
You said so much. I think you are the longest I've engaged like this.
Yes.
So much
Yes.
to say about it. I've only worked with him. Two different levels. So the last one will be like a remark on the celebration. You know, as we celebrate Engineer Olalekan Nuruddin Sode retirement, what message would you like to share with him about the impact he has had in Lagos State, and personally as his political head, you know, what do you like to say?
I would say that Engineer should not rest on his oars. It should just be, it's the end of one assignment. It's the beginning of another assignment. Because I still see him as somebody that I think we need people like him at the federal level. I'm at the federal level now, and I know, given my little experience at the federal level, I know that we need people like him, you know, to help Nigeria to progress in some of his work. Particularly in terms of climate change, in terms of working environment and so on. And I could recall that initially when the president took over, one of the reports that which the president commissioned that we should do was to look at the, you know, previously we've had a lot of flooding all over Nigeria and so on. So when the president now commissioned us to do a lot of work, so Engineer Sode was instrumental to even with the report and so on. And we discovered that River Niger and River Benue, without dredging the downstream of those two rivers and so on, those flooding will continue and so on. But all the report that we submitted to Mr. President at that time and so on. So, and I was saying that perhaps we still need somebody like Engineer Sode at the federal level for us to be able to for enhancement of the work at the federal level, for us to be able to battle the effect of climate change and also the effect of flooding across Nigeria. You know, water level has increased, although across the river. River Niger is about 4,000 kilometers. Coming from Futaja Island I think Futaja Island is around Sierra Leone, but from West Africa, Cote d'Ivoire. So you remember, if you look at the flow of that river from that area, from Futaja Island up to Nigeria, because it empties to Nigeria, empties through Sokoto, Niger, and all those things, before down. Going down to Asaba, because it ends up in Asaba, the creeks in Asaba area. You can see the effect. If there should be flooding in River Niger, You know how many states will affect? Niger, Zamfara, many of them coming down there. It will affect Anambra, Delta, before entering into the Atlantic Ocean, downstream. So the same thing, River Benue. If you have overflow from Cameroon, and then flowing from Taraba, coming to Benue, and then all the Kogi, also they meet. Both of them meet at the confluence. And that confluence is the one that now goes down to the downstream of Asaba, to Anambra, Asaba, and those several other area. So before they empty to the ocean, that's why you have flooding, even affecting as far as Bayelsa. You know. So, and until we are able to do the dredging of those downstream sectors, and also the River Niger and so on, the ability to combat the flooding all over Nigeria will be affected and so on. So unless we are able to improve the dredging, they are able to do a major dredging, because I don't think River Niger have been dredged in a long time. River Niger and Benue, I don't think they've ever been dredged in a long time. So, and I think the task before the federal government is, I think that they are already working on it, on how to dredge, particularly from downstream upwards and so on, so that we can reduce the incidence of flooding across Nigeria. So that's it.
All right. Okay, one more thing. Don't call me an Oliver Twist. Okay, looking ahead, what do you hope the civil? What do you hope is legacy of Engineer Sode will inspire in the next generation of civil servants?
I think his legacy is in manpower development and training. I think when he was PS, he tried as much as possible to encourage a lot of junior engineers, because we must pass down the knowledge. Because if you don't pass down the knowledge, because it will benefit from some of our experienced engineers. I mentioned Little Engineer Santos, Engineer Kisonya, and so on. Those are also the encyclopedia of drainages in those days and so on. And he himself is regarded as an encyclopedia of drainage too. And I think people after him, Engineer Digbite, Engineer Ajadi, and Engineer Digbite, and many others also, they should also borrow from him and so on. They are the ones there now. And I think the most, particularly the data, they have a lot of data in the Office of Drainage Services. There was one during Governor Fashola's period, we were able to do animation of all the drainages in Lagos and so on. That has become very, very valuable. And just, it's an animation that you can watch on the screen. You see all the drainages in Lagos like this and so on. You see, even if you are living in your house, you know where your water will end up. The water from your house, if it empties into drain in front of your house, how it goes around. There's an animation. It's a complete animation of all the drainages in Lagos and so on. That's the kind of data that I believe that we must keep. And they also have a lot of other data, all the alignments, and so many alignments, and also so many things that they have, engineering data that they have. And I think that is the most valuable thing, because the drainage in Lagos, the development of drainage in Lagos started in 1974 during Governor Mobolaji Johnson. And since then, they've developed a lot of drainages and so on. And then during Governor Fashola's period, we also do Lekki, they developed drainages in Lekki and Victoria, more in Victoria Island, and as well as other places, Ikorodu, also part of Alimosho, Agege, and several drainages that we were able to also further develop. I remember Governor Fashola was even asked me recently when we met in Abuja, was asking me, I need a copy of that animation that we did at that time. It was Engineer Sode I called to provide those copies of those animation. He wanted a copy of those animation, and in Abuja, and I said I would get it. So I called Engineer Sode. It was one that provided the data. And I gave it to Governor Fashola in Abuja, just of recent, just a few months ago. It was around late last year or so. So that's the kind of thing that I feel that Lagos State we must keep it. So whoever is there now, and so I think Engineer Digbite and so they must be able to keep this data. They must be able to keep records for future generations, because they will always refer to it. Because without it, you can't go to any canal and say, if you want to start doing it and so on, without understanding the network. If you don't understand the network, you'll just be wasting money. You need to understand the network of drainages and canals in Lagos, because there is a system, and you don't understand the system, you just want to go and put a dredger or anything there and so on, you just be wasting government money. And so you want to first of all understand it, and you need people who are schooled, who are well schooled, who are trained in it and so on, to be able to monitor and chart your course, and be able to do the right work. Otherwise, yeah, if you look at my, I remember. Let me give you one other example. In my estate where I lived, they were developing, that canal was started under Engineer Santos. They used to call it, what do you call it, the canal? I've forgotten the name now. That canal was started under Engineer Santos, and so. And I remember Engineer Santos told me at that time. What do you call it? 2008 and something like that. 2008 and so. Engineer Gisa also continued it, and that canal, when we finished it around Nikon town in Lekki, when we finished, we were able to, because of the money required, we finished it up to a middle level and so on. And when I came back to the Minister of Environment, I remember the estate I was living, they were told that they wanted to do a drainage that would pass through that Nikon town. And they came to meet me and said, how can that be possible? How should you pass? The design is already. So when I called for the design, Engineer Chude did at the resume at that time, and so on. And they now brought the design, and then they told me, no. They say water travels best on a straight alignment. By the time the water start curving through this, you are going to create a problem. And I think Governor Shola was the one in charge at that time, was the governor at that time. So so when I was giving a report at the school, I said, I don't think that canal will pass through Nikon. I think it's going to flow directly straight and up to the lagoon at the back. And so Governor Shola said, no, okay, I want to go and do an inspection. And we came to do an inspection. When we did the inspection, and so, and we looked at everything, and so everybody was there, everybody was there, and so, it was resolved. I said, this canal should go straight, because it will help the flow if it goes straight, and then that was how it was resolved, and that estate was saved from canal being now passing through their estate. And that's what I'm saying about the data, about the engineering. You need to understand it. If you don't, if they had been allowed them to pass through that without consulting the people in charge, and that's how that estate will have been destroyed, and then you will have created a lot of problems and so on. And then the water, what you are doing, and the water will not flow properly, because it will go this way, meandering. Whereas water travels best on a straight alignment. If the water is going straight, the lagoon, it helps the flow. And if you go to the area now, it's a beautiful area, and if you look at the canal flows properly and everything and so on. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. So it's not, so working on clearing drainages and so on, it's an engineering work. It's not just for anybody to just go and do it. If you don't understand the network of the water flow in Lagos, I don't think you will be able to do the drainage work in Lagos. I've always believed that, and and several times I've not been proven wrong.
That's kind of legacy that
yes,
you feel
it's going to be good too. So others, what I want to advise the people is leaving behind is that they must, I value the data they have more. The information they have there is that what they must preserve. They must preserve it. Because I remember when I was secretary to the state government, when we had issue over whether Office of Drainage should stay and all that and so on, the first thing I told the people, I was the secretary to the state government, I just called the people that say, go and keep those data that we developed under Governor Fashola. You must keep those data. They are more valuable to me than even your office or anything and so on. And I think Engineer Ajadi and all that, they were the ones that helped and kept the data and so on. They helped to keep all the data they had and so on. So when Engineer Chude was now resuming back as the Office of Drainage Services and so on, those data became very valuable and became useful for us to continue the progress.
Thank you very much. I have exhausted my questions. And I think that there is a reason why Engineer Chude said we must come here.
Yeah.
I've seen it now.
So,